The words came out so soft I almost missed them. Almost. While everyone's here, go and change her locks. My mother's lips barely moved as she leaned toward my brother Darius at my own birthday party, her hand resting on his arm like she was just telling him something sweet. But I heard it, every single word, and my blood turned to ice in my veins. I was standing maybe 3 feet away, holding my 4-year-old son Isaiah on my hip while he reached for another piece of red velvet cake. The cafe was packed with family and friends singing happy birthday, balloons floating against the ceiling, and here was my own mother plotting something that made my stomach drop. Darius's eyes went wide. He looked at our mother like she'd lost her mind, but she squeezed his arm tighter. "Go now," she hissed. "Take the spare key from my purse." 30 minutes? That's all you need. Before I could move, before I could say a word, Darius was heading for the door, fumbling with something shiny in his hand. My apartment key. The spare I'd given Mama 2 years ago for emergencies. This was my 39th birthday party, and my own mother was sending my brother to break into my apartment. Before we continue, please comment below as I'd love to hear your thoughts and subscribe to the channel to help us hit that big 1,000 subscriber milestone. Let me back up and tell you how I got here, because this story doesn't start at that cafe in downtown Atlanta. It starts 6 months earlier, when my whole world was finally coming together. My name is Tamara Washington, and I'd worked 2 jobs for the past 5 years to keep my head above water. During the day, I was a medical billing specialist at Grady Hospital. At night, I did bookkeeping for 3 small businesses in the neighborhood. My son Isaiah was my whole world, and I was determined to give him the life I never had. My parents, Loretta and Vernon Washington, raised me and Darius in College Park. Daddy worked for Delta Airlines for 30 years before he retired. Mama was a lunch lady at the elementary school. We didn't have much, but we had love. Or so I thought. When I got pregnant with Isaiah, I was still with his father, Terrence. We weren't married, but we were planning on it. Then Terrence got killed in a car accident when I was 7 months pregnant. His drunk friend was driving. Just like that, my whole future changed. My parents stepped up. Mama came to the hospital when Isaiah was born. She helped me during those first sleepless months. When I cried because I missed Terrence so much I couldn't breathe, Mama held me and told me I was strong enough to do this alone. Daddy helped me move into my apartment in East Point when Isaiah turned 2. It wasn't much, just a 1-bedroom, but it was mine. I gave Mama a spare key because she'd watch Isaiah when both my jobs overlapped. Everything seemed fine, normal, until 6 months ago. I was organizing my filing cabinet, the one Daddy had given me for Christmas. I needed to find Isaiah's birth certificate for his preschool application, and I pulled out a folder I didn't recognize. It was wedged in the back, and when I opened it, my hands started shaking. Bank statements, credit card statements, tax returns, all in my name, all from accounts I'd never opened. The first statement showed a checking account at SunTrust Bank with $73,000. The address on file was my parents' house. The second was a credit card with a $50,000 limit, maxed out. The third was a tax return claiming business income I'd never earned. I sat on my bedroom floor with papers spread around me like a crime scene, and that's exactly what it was. A crime. And my own parents were the criminals. I didn't confront them right away. I couldn't. Every time I looked at Mama's face, smiling at me over Sunday dinner, I felt sick. But I also felt confused. There had to be an explanation. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe someone stole my identity and somehow tied it to my parents' address. I spent 3 weeks gathering evidence. I took photos of every document. I called the banks pretending to verify information. I pulled my credit report and found 19 accounts I'd never opened. Cars I'd never bought. Loans I'd never signed for. The total was over $400,000. My parents had been using my Social Security number since I was 18 years old. For 21 years, they'd been stealing from me, destroying my credit, and I never knew because I never thought to check. Who suspects their own parents? I wanted to be wrong. God, I prayed every night that I was wrong. Then I found the business records. My parents had created 3 shell companies in my name. They were filing taxes using my information, claiming deductions for businesses that didn't exist, and pocketing the refunds. According to the documents, I'd owned a consulting firm, a property management company, and a catering business for the past decade. I'd never consulted anyone, never managed property, never catered a meal in my life. The IRS letters started coming to my apartment, notices about unpaid taxes, audit warnings, penalties that would take me 30 years to pay off if they were real. But they weren't my debt. None of it was. I copied everything, every statement, every letter, every shred of evidence. I kept the originals hidden in a lockbox under my bed and put the copies in a safe deposit box at a bank my parents didn't use. Then I put copies on a thumb drive and gave it to my best friend Shanice, who'd been my ride or die since high school. "Girl, you need to call the police," Shanice said when I showed her everything. We were sitting in her living room in Decatur, and she looked at those papers like they were covered in poison. "This is fraud. This is identity theft. Your own mama did this to you." "I know," I whispered. "But she's still my mama. How do I send my own parents to prison?" "How do they steal from their own daughter for 20 years?" Shanice shot back. "Tamara, they don't care about you. They care about money. And when the IRS comes after you, because they will, you're gonna lose everything. Your job, your apartment, your ability to take care of Isaiah. Is that what you want?" I didn't know what I wanted. I was 38 years old, and I felt like a lost child. I decided to wait, to watch, to see if maybe I could fix this without destroying my family. That was my first mistake. My second mistake was thinking my parents didn't know I'd found out. About 3 weeks before my birthday, things started getting weird. Mama called me every day, sometimes twice a day. She wanted to know what I was doing, who I was seeing, if I needed anything. She offered to take Isaiah overnight more often. She started showing up at my apartment unannounced with groceries and casseroles. "Just checking on my baby," she'd say, her smile too bright. But her eyes were searching, darting around my apartment like she was looking for something. Then Daddy started asking about my finances. "You managing okay?" he'd ask over Sunday dinner. "Any problems with your bills? Your credit? Anything unusual?" I'd smile and say everything was fine, and I'd watch him exchange glances with Mama across the table. They knew. Somehow they knew I'd found their secret. The week of my birthday, Mama insisted on throwing me a party. "You're turning 39, baby," she said. "Next year's the big 40. Let's celebrate while we can." I didn't want a party. I wanted answers. I wanted my mama to explain why she'd stolen my whole identity. But I was too afraid to ask, so I said yes to the party. We had it at Lucille's Café, a Black-owned spot in downtown Atlanta known for its soul food and good vibes. Mama invited everybody, aunties, cousins, church members, my co-workers, friends from the neighborhood. It should have been perfect. But from the moment I walked in, something felt off. Mama was too attentive. She kept asking if I needed anything, if I was having fun, if everything was okay at home. Darius seemed nervous, sweating even though the cafe wasn't hot. And Daddy barely looked at me all afternoon. I was cutting my cake when I saw Mama pull Darius aside. They stood near the door, half hidden by a balloon arch, and that's when I heard it. "While everyone's here, go and change her locks." The knife in my hand felt heavy as lead. I set it down carefully, my heart hammering so hard I thought everyone could hear it. Isaiah tugged on my dress, asking for more cake, and I handed him to Shanice without looking away from my brother. Darius hesitated. I saw him shake his head, saw Mama's face harden into something I'd never seen before, something cold and angry. She grabbed her purse, pulled out my apartment key, and pressed it into his palm. "Go now," she ordered. 30 minutes. That's all you need." He left. My own brother walked out of my birthday party to go break into my apartment, and I stood there frozen, watching it happen. "You okay?" Shanice appeared at my elbow, Isaiah reaching for her with sticky hands. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I need you to take Isaiah home with you," I said quietly. "Please. Right now." She looked at me, then at Mama, then back at me. "What's going on?" "Just trust me. Take him and go. I'll explain everything later." Shanice didn't ask questions. She bundled Isaiah up, made excuses about bedtime, and left. I watched them go, relief flooding through me. Whatever was about to happen, my baby wouldn't be here to see it. I spent the next 20 minutes pretending everything was fine. I smiled. I thanked people for coming. I ate cake that tasted like cardboard. And I watched my mother watch the door, counting down the minutes until Darius came back. When he finally returned, his face was the color of old newspaper. "Mama," he said, his voice shaking. "Mama, we need to talk. Outside. Now." My mother's face went from anxious to terrified in 1 second. She grabbed Darius's arm and practically dragged him out the front door. I waited maybe 10 seconds before following them into the parking lot. They were standing next to Mama's Buick, and Darius was talking fast, his hands moving wildly. "The door was broken, kicked in. There's police tape everywhere and cops in the hallway asking questions." "What?" Mama's voice came out as a shriek. "What do you mean the door's broken?" "Someone broke in. The whole frame is busted. There's police cars outside and they're treating it like a crime scene." I stepped forward, my voice steady even though inside I was screaming. "What's going on? Darius, why were you at my apartment?" They both spun around. Mama's face went through a dozen expressions in 2 seconds. Shock, fear, anger, and finally something that looked almost like desperation. "Baby, we can explain," she started. "Explain what? Why you sent Darius to break into my apartment? Why you told him to change my locks?" Darius looked between us, understanding dawning on his face. "You knew? She knew I was going?" "Of course she knew," Mama snapped. "She's been sneaking around, going through my things. She found papers that are none of her business." "None of my business?" I felt something break inside me, something that had been holding me together for months. "You used my identity to commit fraud. You opened accounts in my name. You filed fake tax returns. You stole over $400,000 and it's none of my business?" The look on Mama's face told me everything. No denial, no explanation, just cold, hard calculation. "Where are they?" she asked quietly. "Where are the documents you stole from me?" "I didn't steal anything. They had my name on them, my social security number, my identity that you've been using like your own personal credit card for 20 years. Darius backed away, his hands up. "I didn't know. I swear to God, Mama, you didn't tell me what this was about. You just said you needed to get something from Tamara's apartment before she used it to hurt the family." "Shut up, Darius," Mama hissed. But he couldn't stop, the words tumbling out like water from a broken pipe. "You said she had documents that could get us all in trouble. You said we needed to get them back before she did something stupid. You never said you were stealing from her." "I said shut up." A police car pulled into the parking lot, moving slow. The officer behind the wheel looked at us standing there, looked at the cafe full of people visible through the windows, and kept driving. But it was enough to snap me back to reality. "Who broke into my apartment?" I asked. "Who did you send before Darius?" Mama's jaw clenched. She didn't answer. "Mama, who did you send to my house?" "Someone who was supposed to handle this quietly," she finally said. "Someone who was supposed to get those documents and make this problem disappear." The casual way she said it made my skin crawl. Make this problem disappear. Like I was the problem. Like her own daughter discovering she'd been victimized for 2 decades was just an inconvenience to be solved. "What went wrong?" I asked. "I don't know. He was supposed to be in and out in 5 minutes. Get the papers, maybe look around a little, and leave. That's it. You hired someone to break into my home while I was at a party you planned. You were going to distract me while a stranger went through my things. Don't make it sound so terrible, Mama said. He wasn't going to hurt anything. He was just going to retrieve what belongs to me. Nothing in my apartment belongs to you. Those documents do. I don't care whose name is on them. That's my business, my accounts, my money. You had no right to go snooping through my private affairs. I almost laughed. The audacity of it, the complete lack of awareness, would have been funny if it wasn't so heartbreaking. Your private affairs? Mama, you committed fraud using my identity. You destroyed my credit. You could have gotten me arrested. How is that your private business? You don't understand how hard it's been, she said, and for the first time her voice cracked. Your daddy's retirement wasn't enough. We had bills, medical expenses, things you don't know about. We needed help, and you were our daughter. We gave you life. We raised you. We gave you everything. And when we needed you, you weren't going to help. You never asked me for help. You stole from me. Because you would have said no. Mama's voice rose to a shout. Just like you said no when we needed money for your daddy's surgery. Just like you said no when we asked you to co-sign for the car. You were always too busy counting your pennies. Too worried about your little apartment and your little life to think about the people who sacrificed everything for you. The memory hit me like a slap. 3 years ago, Daddy needed knee surgery. They asked me to help pay for it because their insurance wouldn't cover everything. I just had Isaiah, just lost Terrence, just started my second job. I'd given them $2,000, every spare penny I had, and apologized that it wasn't more. Apparently, that wasn't enough, so they'd taken everything. I gave you what I could, I said, my voice breaking. I was grieving and broke, and trying to keep my baby alive. But you didn't care about that. You just saw me as a source of money. Don't be dramatic, Mama said. We would have paid you back eventually. Paid me back? Mama, you committed federal crimes. You committed identity theft, fraud, tax evasion. The IRS is coming after me for money I don't owe. I could lose my job. I could go to jail for something I didn't do. No, you won't, she said quickly. Not if you keep your mouth shut. Nobody has to know about this. You give me those documents, you forget everything you saw, and we can all move on. I'll fix the accounts. I'll clear the debts. Just give me a little time. She actually believed that. I could see it in her eyes. She thought she could smooth this over, make it disappear, if only I cooperated. My phone rang. I pulled it out and saw my neighbor's number. Mrs. Chen from down the hall, the retired teacher who sometimes watched Isaiah when I was in a bind. Hello? Tamara, honey, are you okay? Mrs. Chen's voice was worried. There's police at your door. They're saying someone broke in. Your door is completely destroyed. I know, I said. I'm on my way. I hung up and looked at my mother. Really looked at her. At the woman who'd braided my hair and packed my lunches and taught me to pray. At the stranger who'd been stealing my identity for 20 years and saw nothing wrong with it. I have to go, I said. The police need to talk to me. Don't you tell them anything, Mama said urgently. You hear me? Not one word about the accounts or the documents. You tell them it was a random break-in. You tell them you don't know who did it or why. Why would I do that? Because I'm your mother, and I'm telling you to. I almost obeyed. 20 years of conditioning, of being a good daughter, of doing what I was told, almost made me agree. But then I thought about Isaiah, about my baby boy who deserved better than this. Who deserved a mother who stood up for what was right even when it was hard? No, I said. What? I said no. I'm not covering for you. I'm not lying to the police. I'm done. Mama's face twisted into something ugly. You ungrateful little bitch. After everything we've done for you, after all the sacrifices we made. You didn't sacrifice anything. You stole from me. There's a difference. You go to the police with this, you're destroying this family. Your daddy could have a heart attack from the stress. Your brother's going to lose respect for you. Everyone at church will know you turned on your own parents. Is that what you want? I want the truth, I said simply. And I want my life back. I turned to walk away, but Mama grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in hard enough to hurt. You think you're so smart? You think you've got it all figured out? Let me tell you something, baby girl. You turn on me, and I'll make sure you never see Isaiah again. The world stopped. Everything went quiet except for the sound of my heart breaking. What did you say? You heard me. I'll go to CPS. I'll tell them you're unstable, that you're neglecting that baby, that you're not fit to be a mother. I'll get custody, and there's nothing you can do about it. You wouldn't. Try me. I've been watching Isaiah 3 days a week for years. I know every judge at the courthouse. I know people at CPS. And I know exactly what to say to make them take that child away from you. Darius made a noise like he'd been punched. Mama, no, you can't do that. Stay out of this, Darius. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I was furious. The kind of rage that burns cold and clear and shows you exactly what needs to be done. You're right, I said quietly. You know a lot of people. But do you know what you don't know? What? I pulled my phone out of my pocket. The phone that had been recording audio the entire time we'd been standing in this parking lot. The phone that had captured every word she'd said, every threat she'd made. You don't know that I started recording the second I followed you out here, I said. Every word, every threat, all of it. The color drained from her face. So here's what's going to happen, I continued, my voice steady. I'm going to drive to my apartment. I'm going to talk to the police. And I'm going to tell them everything about the fraud, about the break-in, about you hiring someone to steal evidence from my home. And if you try to come near me or my son ever again, I'll play this recording for every person who'll listen. Every judge, every social worker, every member of New Hope Baptist Church. You're making a mistake, Mama whispered. The mistake was trusting you. I walked away, got in my car, started the engine. And I didn't look back at the woman who'd given birth to me, raised me, and spent 20 years destroying me one stolen identity at a time. The drive to my apartment took 15 minutes, but it felt like hours. My hands shook on the steering wheel. My phone sat on the passenger seat, still recording, preserving evidence of the moment I chose my son over my mother. When I pulled up to my building, there were 3 police cars outside, and that's when I saw him. The maintenance worker, except he wasn't maintenance. He was being led out in handcuffs, screaming something about being double-crossed, about how Loretta Washington promised him $5,000 to retrieve some papers, but when he got there, the papers weren't where she said they'd be. So he'd torn the apartment apart looking for them, and that's when the neighbor had heard the noise and called the cops. The officer holding him saw me and waved me over. Ms. Washington, we need to ask you some questions. Okay, I said. But first, I need to tell you something. I need to tell you everything. And that's exactly what I did. The detective's name was Sergeant Raymond Foster, and he had kind eyes that reminded me of my high school principal. We sat in my destroyed apartment, surrounded by overturned furniture and scattered papers, while I told him everything. And I mean everything. I showed him the recording of my mother's threats. I gave him the thumb drive with copies of all the fraudulent documents. I explained the 20-year scheme, the fake businesses, the stolen identity. My voice stayed steady, even though inside I was falling apart. Ms. Washington, Sergeant Foster said when I finished, you understand what you're telling me here? You're accusing your parents of multiple felonies. Identity theft, fraud, tax evasion, these are serious charges. I know, I said, but it's the truth. He looked at the evidence spread across my kitchen table. Bank statements, credit reports, tax returns, all bearing my name on accounts I'd never opened. This is extensive. You've been documenting this for months. 6 months, since I found the first statements. Why didn't you come to us sooner? I laughed, but it came out bitter. Because they're my parents. Because I kept thinking there had to be an explanation. Because I didn't want to believe my own mother could do this to me. Sergeant Foster nodded like he understood. Maybe he did. And the man we arrested tonight, Raymond Mitchell? Your mother hired him to break in and retrieve this evidence? Yes. She thought if she could get the documents back, I'd have no proof. She could make it all disappear. But something went wrong. He couldn't find what he was looking for. My neighbor, Mrs. Chen, heard the noise and called you before he could finish searching. Lucky for you, Sergeant Foster said. Mitchell's got a record. Breaking and entering, theft, assault. Your mother hired a dangerous man to come into your home. The weight of that hit me. Mama had been so desperate to cover up her crimes that she'd sent a violent criminal to my apartment. What if Isaiah had been home? What if I'd come back early and interrupted him? What happens now? I asked. Now we investigate. We'll need to bring your mother in for questioning. Your father, too, since his name is on some of these accounts. We'll work with the IRS and the FBI, since this involves federal crimes. It's going to take time, Ms. Washington. Months, maybe longer. And it's going to get ugly. I know. Your family's going to hate you for this. Some of them already do. He looked at me for a long moment. You're doing the right thing. I know it doesn't feel like it, but you are. Nobody should have to carry someone else's debt, especially debt from crimes you didn't commit. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Sergeant Foster gave me his card and told me to call if I remembered anything else or if my parents tried to contact me. Then he helped me put a chair against my broken door and recommended a locksmith who could come out first thing in the morning. I spent that night at Shanice's house, sleeping on her couch while Isaiah dozed in the guest room. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Mama's face in that parking lot, heard her voice threatening to take my son. You did what you had to do, Shanice said, bringing me tea at 2 a.m. when she found me awake. Don't second-guess yourself now. My whole family's going to fall apart. Your family fell apart 20 years ago when your mama decided to steal from you. You're just finally seeing it. The next morning, my phone started ringing at 6 a.m. Aunt Paulette, Uncle Jerome, Cousin Kimberly. Every single one of them had heard about the police showing up at Mama's house at 5:30 that morning to bring her in for questioning. I let every call go to voicemail. I already knew what they'd say. By noon, the voicemails had turned vicious. How could you do this to your own mother? Aunt Paulette's voice was shaking with rage. She raised you. She loved you. And you repay her by sending the police to her door like she's some kind of criminal? You always were selfish, Cousin Kimberly said, thinking only about yourself. Your mama needed help and you turned on her. We all know what kind of daughter you really are. Uncle Jerome's message was the worst. Your daddy's in the hospital. His blood pressure went through the roof when the police came. He might have a stroke, and it's your fault. You better pray he makes it through this, because if he doesn't, his blood is on your hands. I sat on Shanice's couch, listening to message after message, each one more hateful than the last. Not one person asked for my side of the story. Not one person wondered if maybe, just maybe, Mama had done something wrong. They'd already decided I was the villain. Don't listen to that poison, Shanice said, taking my phone away. They don't know what really happened. Should I call the hospital? Check on Daddy? Girl, no. That's exactly what they want. They want you feeling guilty so you'll back down. Don't fall for it. But I did feel guilty. I felt like I'd detonated a bomb in the middle of my family, and now everyone was bleeding from the shrapnel. The news hit social media by that evening. Nothing official. But word travels fast in Black Atlanta. Somebody's cousin who worked at the courthouse posted something vague about a prominent church family being investigated for fraud. Somebody else commented with prayer hand emojis, and I always knew something was off about them. My phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. "You think you're smart? You think you've won? This isn't over. Not by a long shot." I showed it to Shanice. She grabbed my phone and called Sergeant Foster immediately. "That's harassment," he said when she read him the message. "Save it. Document everything. If they keep contacting you, we can add intimidation charges." "They?" I asked when Shanice hung up. "You think it's more than just Mama? Baby, your whole family is circling the wagons. They're going to come at you with everything they've got." She was right. 2 days later, I got a call from CPS. Someone had filed a report claiming I was neglecting Isaiah. The social worker, a tired-looking woman named Ms. Rivera, came to Shanice's house to investigate. "I'm required to follow up on all reports," she said apologetically. "Can I see Isaiah?" I brought him out. He was clean, healthy, happy. He showed Ms. Rivera his toy trucks and told her about the pancakes Auntie Shanice had made for breakfast. "He seems fine," Ms. Rivera said, making notes. "Your home was recently burglarized, is that correct?" "Yes. Someone broke in. That's why we're staying with my friend until the door is fixed." "And you have stable employment?" "2 jobs. I can provide pay stubs, references, anything you need." Ms. Rivera looked uncomfortable. "The report claimed you were involved in criminal activity, financial crimes." My stomach dropped. "I'm the victim of financial crimes. My parents used my identity to commit fraud. I reported them to the police." "I see." More notes. "And your son's father?" "Deceased. Car accident 4 years ago." "I'm sorry." She closed her notebook. "Ms. Washington, I don't see any evidence of neglect here. Your son is well cared for, you have stable housing arrangements, and you're employed. I'll note in my report that the claims were unfounded." "Can you tell me who made the report?" "I'm not supposed to disclose that information, but—" She hesitated. "Let's just say it came from a family member who was very insistent that you were unfit. Given the circumstances you've described, I suspect this was retaliatory." After she left, I called Sergeant Foster again. "My mother filed a false CPS report." "Can you prove it?" "The social worker basically told me it was a family member. Who else would it be?" "Unfortunately, unless we can definitively prove your mother made the call, there's not much we can do. But we'll note it in our investigation. It shows a pattern of harassment and intimidation." A pattern. Like this was going to keep happening. Like Mama wasn't going to stop until she'd destroyed me completely. That Sunday, I made the mistake of going to church. New Hope Baptist had been my church home since I was 6 years old. I'd been baptized in that water. I'd sung in the youth choir. I'd volunteered in the nursery and helped with vacation Bible school. These people knew me. They'd supported me when Terrence died. They'd thrown me a baby shower for Isaiah. But when I walked through those doors with my son on my hip, the whispers started immediately. Sister Patricia turned away from me. Brother James's wife pulled her children closer, like I might contaminate them. Aunt Paulette saw me from across the sanctuary, and her face twisted with such hatred that I actually stepped backward. Pastor Dixon found me in the lobby, trying to decide whether to stay or run. "Sister Tamara," he said gently, "can we talk in my office?" I followed him, Isaiah holding my hand, his little face confused by all the mean looks. Pastor Dixon was 72 years old, had led New Hope for 30 years, and had presided over my parents' wedding renewal just 5 years ago. He gestured for me to sit, and I did, pulling Isaiah onto my lap. "Your mother came to see me," he said. "She told me what happened. Her version, anyway." "And what was her version?" "That you've been stealing from them. That you forged documents to make it look like they committed fraud when really you were the one taking their money. She said you've had a mental breakdown since Terrence died, and you're trying to hurt them out of spite." I felt dizzy. "And you believe her?" "I didn't say that." Pastor Dixon leaned forward. I've known you your whole life, Tamara. I watched you grow up. I know your character. So when Loretta came in here crying and carrying on, I listened. But I also had questions. Like what? Like why would a daughter who's been nothing but devoted suddenly turn on her parents? Like why the police found enough evidence to open a formal investigation if this was all made up? Like why your mother seemed more concerned about covering this up than figuring out the truth? I started crying. I couldn't help it. After days of everyone turning against me, here was one person who actually questioned the narrative. "Thank you," I whispered. "Don't thank me yet. I need to hear your side, all of it. And I need the truth, Tamara. The whole truth." So I told him. Everything I'd told the police, plus the emotional weight of discovering your parents have been stealing from you since you were 18. The shame of it, the betrayal, the crushing realization that the people who were supposed to protect you were actually predators. Pastor Dixon listened without interrupting. When I finished, he sat back in his chair and closed his eyes. "Lord have mercy," he said quietly. 20 years. "Yes, sir." "And you have proof of all this?" "The police have everything. Bank records, credit reports, tax documents. It's all real." He opened his eyes and looked at me with such sadness. "Your mother is going to prison." "I know." "Your father, too, most likely." "I know." "And half this congregation is going to hate you for it, because they don't understand. They're going to see a daughter who turned on her parents, not a victim who fought back against her abusers." "I already know that too, Pastor. I walked through those doors today. I saw their faces." "Then why did you come?" "Because this is my church," I said, my voice breaking. "Because I've been coming here my whole life and I shouldn't have to give that up too. Haven't I lost enough?" Pastor Dixon was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood up and walked to the door. "Come with me," he said. I followed him back into the sanctuary, Isaiah's hand in mine. Service had started. The choir was singing. Every pew was packed with people who'd known me since I was a child, and half of them were glaring at me like I was the devil himself. Pastor Dixon walked straight up to the pulpit. He held up his hand and the music stopped. "Church family," he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. "We need to have a conversation about judgment." The sanctuary went silent. "There's a young woman here today who's been through something terrible. Her own parents betrayed her in a way I can't even fully comprehend. They stole her identity. They destroyed her credit. They committed crimes in her name and then threatened her when she discovered the truth." Murmurs rippled through the congregation. Mama's allies started shifting in their seats. "Now some of you have heard a different story," Pastor Dixon continued. "Some of you have been told that this young woman is the villain, that she's lying, that she's attacking her own parents for no reason. But I've seen the evidence, I've heard the truth, and I'm here to tell you that Sister Tamara Washington is the victim, not the perpetrator." Aunt Paulette stood up. "Pastor, with all due respect, you don't know the whole story." "And you do, Sister Paulette? Were you there when Loretta Washington opened fraudulent accounts? Were you there when she filed false tax returns? Were you there when she hired a criminal to break into her daughter's apartment?" "My sister would never—" "Your sister is being investigated by the police, the IRS, and the FBI. That's not speculation, that's fact. And instead of supporting the actual victim in this situation, half of you have turned on her because she had the courage to tell the truth." The sanctuary erupted, people shouting, people crying, people defending Mama, people demanding to hear more. Pastor Dixon raised his voice over the chaos. "Jesus said, 'The truth will set you free.' He didn't say the truth would be easy. He didn't say the truth would make you popular. He said it would set you free. And Sister Tamara chose freedom over comfort. She chose justice over keeping up appearances. She chose her son's future over her mother's crimes. And if we can't support her in that, then we need to examine our own hearts." I stood there, tears streaming down my face while the church I'd loved my entire life tore itself apart over my life. Some people stood up and walked out. They couldn't stand to hear it. Couldn't accept that perfect, sweet Sister Loretta from the hospitality committee was actually a criminal who'd been stealing from her own child. But others stayed. Others came up to me after service and hugged me, told me they were sorry, told me they believed me, told me I was brave. Sister Marlene, who taught my Sunday school class when I was 7, took my hands in hers. "I knew something was wrong," she said. "Your mama has been driving a brand new car every 2 years, taking vacations, buying expensive things, all on a retired lunch lady's budget?" It never made sense. Brother Thompson, who worked in banking, nodded. "I saw their house. They renovated the whole thing last year. New kitchen, new bathrooms, new everything. That costs money they shouldn't have had." The pieces were falling into place for everyone, not just me. But the people who mattered most stayed silent. The people who could have made a difference, Daddy's siblings, Mama's best friends, the deacon board, said nothing. They chose sides without knowing the full story, and they chose Mama. That week, the indictments came down. Loretta Washington, 12 counts of identity theft, 15 counts of fraud, 8 counts of tax evasion, 1 count of conspiracy to commit burglary. Vernon Washington, 9 counts of fraud, 8 counts of tax evasion, 1 count of conspiracy to commit burglary. The bail was set at $50,000 each. They couldn't pay it. All that money they'd stolen, all those fraudulent accounts, and they'd spent every penny. There was nothing left. They sat in jail while awaiting trial. I should have felt victorious. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt hollow. My phone rang. "Darius." "Tamara," he said, his voice rough like he'd been crying. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know what they were doing. I swear to God I didn't know." "I know," I said. "I believe you." "Can we meet? Can we talk? I need to explain something." We met at a diner in Duluth, far from our neighborhood where everyone knew our family drama. Darius looked terrible. He'd lost weight. His eyes were red and swollen. "I found more," he said, sliding a folder across the table. "I went to the house to get some things for Daddy, and I found another box of documents. Tamara, it's worse than we thought." I opened the folder, and my blood ran cold. They hadn't just stolen from me. They'd stolen from Darius, too. His credit was ruined. His identity had been used for even more fraudulent accounts. And there was one more thing. A life insurance policy in my name that I'd never signed for. Beneficiary, Loretta Washington. Amount, $250,000. "When did they take this out?" I asked, my hands shaking. Darius pointed to the date. 6 months ago. Right around the time you must have started discovering their scheme. The implications hit me like a freight train. My mother had taken out a life insurance policy on me right when I'd started figuring out her crimes. A policy that would pay her $250,000 if I died. "Darius," I whispered. "What was she planning?" "I don't know. But that man she hired to break into your apartment? Raymond Mitchell? I looked him up. He's not just a thief, Tamara. He did time for assault with a deadly weapon. He put someone in the hospital." The room spun. Had Mama hired him just to retrieve documents? Or had there been a darker purpose? If I'd been home that night, if I'd interrupted him, what would have happened? "We need to show this to Sergeant Foster," Darius said. "Now. Tonight." We drove straight to the police station. Sergeant Foster took one look at the life insurance policy, and his face went grim. "Ms. Washington," he said carefully, "I need you to take this seriously. Your mother may have been planning something more than just retrieving documents." "You think she wanted him to hurt me?" "I think she wanted those documents, but I also think she might have given him permission to do whatever was necessary to get them. And with a life insurance policy this size, taken out right when you discovered her crimes." He trailed off, but I understood. "She might have wanted me dead." The words hung in the air like poison. "We can't prove intent," Sergeant Foster said. "But we can add insurance fraud to the charges, and we can make sure the prosecutor knows about the timeline. This changes things, Ms. Washington. This changes everything." I walked out of that police station and threw up in the parking lot. Darius held my hair back while I emptied my stomach, the reality of it all finally hitting me at night. My mother hadn't just stolen from me. She might have been planning to kill me. That night, I lay in the dark at Shanice's house and stared at the ceiling. Isaiah was asleep in the next room, safe and innocent and unaware that his grandmother was a monster. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You should have kept your mouth shut. Now you're going to regret everything." Then another. "We know where you're staying. We know where your son goes to preschool. You better watch your back." I showed them to Sergeant Foster first thing in the morning. He traced the numbers, both burner phones, untraceable. "Someone's trying to scare you," he said. "It's working. We can put a patrol car outside your friend's house. We can have someone watch your son's school. But Ms. Washington, you need to understand something. Your mother has friends, people who believe her story, and some of them might be willing to do things to protect her." "What kind of things?" "The kind of things that make witness protection sound like a good idea." He wasn't joking. That afternoon, I picked Isaiah up from preschool early. His teacher, Ms. Johnson, pulled me aside. "Ms. Washington, I need to tell you something. An older woman came by yesterday asking questions about Isaiah. She said she was his grandmother and wanted to know his schedule, when he arrived, when he left, if anyone besides you ever picked him up." My heart stopped. "What did she look like?" "Short, heavy-set, about 65. She had a church lady vibe, you know? Sweet smile, nice dress." That wasn't Mama. Mama was in jail. But it matched the description of her best friend, Sister Carol from the hospitality committee. "What did you tell her?" "Nothing. We have strict policies about sharing information, but Ms. Washington, she was very insistent, almost aggressive. It made me uncomfortable. If she comes back, call the police. Don't engage with her. Don't tell her anything." "Is everything okay?" "No," I said honestly. "Everything is very not okay." I took Isaiah home, back to my apartment, which now had a new door with 3 deadbolts, and I held him while he played with his trucks. This beautiful, innocent child who'd done nothing wrong but be born into a family of criminals and victims. "Mama," he said, looking up at me with Terrence's eyes. "Why is Grandma Loretta mad at us?" "What makes you think she's mad, baby?" "She called. She said you were being bad and she was gonna fix it." The room tilted. "When did Grandma call you?" "Yesterday, at school. Ms. Johnson let me talk on the phone." I called Ms. Johnson immediately. "You let my mother call my son?" "What? No, Ms. Washington. I would never. Oh, God. Someone called saying they were his grandmother and needed to speak to him about a family emergency. I thought it was legitimate. I'm so sorry." I hung up and called Sergeant Foster for what felt like the 100th time that week. "She called him from jail," I said, my voice shaking with rage and fear. "She used her phone privileges to call my son's preschool and somehow got them to put her through to him. She's threatening me through my 4-year-old. "That's a violation of her bail conditions," Sergeant Foster said. "Well, it would be if she'd made bail. Since she's in jail, we can restrict her phone privileges. But Ms. Washington, you need to get a restraining order for you and your son, today." I spent that afternoon at the courthouse filing for an emergency protective order against both my parents. The judge granted it immediately, forbidding them from any contact with me or Isaiah, directly or indirectly. But it felt like closing the barn door after the horses had escaped. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound made me jump. Every car that passed outside made me check the locks. I kept thinking about that life insurance policy, about Raymond Mitchell, about what might have happened if things had gone differently. At 3 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Tamara? It was Daddy's voice, calling from jail. Baby girl, we need to talk. We have nothing to talk about. You're violating the restraining order. Just listen, please. Your mama, she's not doing well. She's talking crazy, saying things that don't make sense. She needs help. She needs to face consequences for what she did. I know. His voice cracked. I know we did wrong. I know we hurt you. But Tamara, she's talking about fixing this. About making sure you can't testify. Do you understand what I'm saying? My blood turned to ice. Are you telling me Mama's planning something? I'm telling you that she's desperate and desperate people do desperate things. I'm telling you to be careful. I'm telling you that I never wanted any of this to happen and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You could have stopped her. Any time in the last 20 years, you could have told her no. I know. God help me, I know. But I was weak and I let her convince me it was okay, that you'd never find out, that we were just borrowing against your future. I was wrong, Tamara. I was so wrong. I wanted to scream at him, to tell him that sorry didn't fix 20 years of fraud, that sorry didn't give me back my credit or my peace of mind or my innocence, that sorry didn't make my mother any less of a monster. But he was crying. My daddy, who I'd never heard cry in my life, was sobbing on the phone from a jail cell. I don't forgive you, I said quietly. I don't know if I ever will, but I appreciate the warning. She's got someone on the outside, he said urgently. I don't know who, but she's been making calls, whispering to someone during visitation. She's planning something, baby girl. You need to watch yourself. He hung up before I could respond. I called Sergeant Foster, again, at 3 a.m. The man probably knew my number by heart at this point. I just got a call from my father, I said. He's warning me that my mother's planning something, that she has someone on the outside helping her. Sergeant Foster didn't even sound surprised. We've been monitoring her calls. We know she's been in contact with someone, but we haven't identified them yet. The calls are being routed through a third party. We're working on it. Work faster. My son's life might depend on it. I understand your fear, Ms. Washington, but you need to stay calm. We have patrols near your home. We're watching. You're not alone in this. But I felt alone. Terrifyingly alone. The next morning, I woke up to Shanice screaming my name. I ran to the living room and found her standing by the window, her face pale, pointing outside. Someone had spray-painted my car during the night, big red letters across the windshield. Snitches get stitches. And underneath, worse, your son is next. Sergeant Foster had the spray paint photographed and documented within an hour. He also had 2 uniformed officers stationed outside Shanice's house 24/7. This is escalating, he said, stating the obvious. Whoever's helping your mother is getting bolder. Can't you trace the paint? Fingerprints? Something? We're trying, but Ms. Washington, I think it's time we discuss protective custody. You mean hiding? I mean keeping you and your son safe until the trial. The trial was scheduled for 6 weeks away. 6 weeks of living in fear, looking over my shoulder, wondering if every stranger was someone Mama had sent to hurt me. No, I said. I'm not running. I'm not giving her that power. Then we need to be smart about this. We need to figure out who's helping her. The answer came 2 days later in the most unexpected way. I was at work, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy, when my coworker Jasmine pulled me aside. Girl, isn't that your brother? She pointed to the parking lot where Darius was pacing back and forth, talking on his phone, looking agitated. I went outside. Darius, what are you doing here? He looked up and his face was a mess of anger and fear. I figured it out. I know who's helping Mama. Who? Uncle Jerome. My father's brother. The one who'd left me that voicemail blaming me for Daddy's hospital visit. The one who'd always been Mama's favorite, who she'd loaned money to over the years, who she'd helped out of tight spots. "How do you know?" "I followed him. He visited Mama at the jail yesterday and I was suspicious, so I waited in the parking lot. After he left, he made a call. I couldn't hear everything, but I heard enough. He was talking about taking care of the problem and making sure she couldn't testify and doing what needed to be done." "Did you record it?" "Better." Darius held up his phone. "I followed him to a storage unit in Forest Park. He met up with Raymond Mitchell." My stomach dropped. "The man who broke into my apartment?" "The same. He made bail last week. And now he's meeting with Uncle Jerome in secret. Tomorrow, they're planning something." We went straight to Sergeant Foster with the information. He immediately brought in additional officers and started surveillance on Uncle Jerome. Within 24 hours, they had everything they needed. Uncle Jerome had been visiting Mama regularly, receiving instructions and passing them along to Raymond Mitchell. The plan was simple and terrifying. Wait until the trial, follow me from the courthouse, and handle the situation before I could testify against Mama. Handle the situation, like I was a problem to be erased. "We're arresting your uncle tonight," Sergeant Foster said. "And we're revoking Mitchell's bail. But Ms. Washington, you need to understand that your mother is going to keep trying. She's desperate, and desperate people are dangerous." "What do you want me to do?" "I want you to consider witness protection until after the trial." This time, I agreed. They moved Isaiah and me to a safe house in Marietta. It was a small apartment, clean but impersonal with security cameras and guards. Shanice wasn't allowed to visit, but she could call. Pastor Dixon checked in every other day. Darius came by once a week with groceries and updates. The isolation was suffocating. Isaiah asked constantly when we could go home, why we couldn't see Grandma and Grandpa, why everything was different. How do you explain to a 4-year-old that his grandmother tried to have his mother killed? You don't. You just hold him and tell him everything's going to be okay, even when you're not sure you believe it yourself. 3 weeks into our protective custody, Darius brought news that changed everything. "Daddy's taking a plea deal," he said. "He's testifying against Mama." I stared at him. "What?" His lawyer convinced him. Said with all the evidence against them both, he was looking at 20 years minimum. But if he cooperated, told the prosecutors everything, agreed to testify against Mama, they'd reduce his sentence to 5 years with possibility of parole after 3. And he agreed? "He's done, Tamara. He's tired. He says he can't protect her anymore, can't lie for her anymore. He wants to tell the truth and accept his punishment." Part of me felt vindicated. Part of me felt sad. This was my father, the man who'd taught me to ride a bike and walked me to school and told me I could be anything I wanted. And he'd been a criminal the whole time. What did he say about Mama's plan? About Uncle Jerome and Mitchell? Everything. He told them she orchestrated the whole thing, that she'd been planning to have you killed if you didn't drop the charges, that the life insurance policy was part of it, that Uncle Jerome was supposed to pay Mitchell $50,000 after you were dead. $50,000 they didn't have. They were going to get it from the life insurance payout. It was all connected. The prosecutors added attempted murder to Mama's charges, conspiracy to commit murder, solicitation of murder. The list kept growing. The trial began on a cold Monday in November. I sat in the witness box and told my story to a jury of 12 strangers. I showed them the documents. I played them the recording of Mama threatening to take Isaiah away. I explained how I'd discovered the fraud, how I'd gathered evidence, how I'd tried to protect myself. Mama sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, and she stared at me with such hatred that it felt like physical force. Her lawyer tried to paint me as vindictive, as mentally unstable, as a daughter who'd fabricated everything out of spite. But then Daddy took the stand. He told them everything. 20 years of fraud, explained in painful detail. How it started small, just one credit card in my name when I turned 18. How Mama justified it by saying we'd pay it back before I ever needed credit. How it snowballed into businesses and bank accounts and tax fraud. "Why did you go along with it?" the prosecutor asked. Daddy's voice broke. "Because I was weak. Because I wanted things we couldn't afford. Because my wife convinced me our daughter would never find out, and by the time she did, we'd have fixed everything. But we never fixed it. We just kept taking." "And what about the plan to harm your daughter?" "I didn't know about that until it was too late. Loretta kept saying she'd handle it. She'd make the problem go away. I thought she meant she'd convince Tamara to drop the charges. I didn't know she meant—" He couldn't finish. Mama's lawyer tried to discredit him, but the evidence was overwhelming. Bank records, credit reports, recorded threats. The testimony of Raymond Mitchell, who'd taken his own plea deal and admitted Mama hired him first to steal documents, and then, when that failed, to eliminate the witness. Uncle Jerome testified too, looking broken and ashamed. He explained how Mama had manipulated him, played on his loyalty to family, convinced him that I was trying to destroy them all for no reason. "She told me Tamara had always been jealous," he said, "that she was lying about everything because she wanted attention. I believed her because I wanted to believe her. Because accepting the truth meant accepting that my sister-in-law was a monster." The trial lasted 2 weeks. 2 weeks of testimony and evidence, and my entire family's dirty laundry aired out for the world to see. When the jury came back, it took them 4 hours to reach a verdict. Guilty, on all counts. The judge sentenced Mama to 25 years in federal prison. No possibility of parole for at least 15 years. Uncle Jerome got 7 years for conspiracy. Raymond Mitchell got 12. Daddy, because he cooperated, got 5 years with parole possible after 3. I sat in that courtroom and watched my mother be led away in chains, and I felt nothing. Not victory, not sadness, just emptiness. But then I looked at Isaiah, sitting with Shanice in the gallery, safe and healthy and alive. And I felt something else. Relief, liberation, hope. We moved back to our apartment the day after the sentencing. Shanice helped me unpack and set up new security measures, better locks, cameras, a monitored alarm system. "You did it," she said, hugging me tight. "You survived." "We survived," I corrected. "I couldn't have done this without you. That's what family's for. Real family, not the kind that steals your identity." Pastor Dixon came by with a casserole and a prayer. "The church wants you to know you're welcome back any time," he said. "Not everyone believes in you yet, but they will. Truth has a way of changing minds." Darius visited every week. We were rebuilding our relationship slowly, carefully. He'd been a victim too, and he was working with the authorities to clear his credit and rebuild his identity. "Think you'll ever forgive them?" he asked one afternoon while Isaiah played in the next room. "I don't know," I admitted. "Maybe Daddy eventually. He at least showed remorse. But Mama? She never apologized, never admitted she was wrong. Even at sentencing, she blamed me, said I'd destroyed the family." "She destroyed the family 20 years ago. You just exposed it." The financial recovery took months. The IRS was surprisingly understanding once they saw the evidence. They cleared the fraudulent tax debts and worked with me to clean up my records. My credit score, which had been destroyed, slowly started to climb. Accounts were closed, debts were discharged. My identity was finally my own again. I kept working my 2 jobs, but with the stress lifted, I actually started enjoying life. Isaiah thrived in preschool. We took trips to the zoo and the aquarium. We had dance parties in the living room. We built a life that was ours, untainted by theft and lies. 6 months after the trial, I got a letter from Daddy. He'd been transferred to a medium security facility in South Georgia. The letter was short. "Tamara, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want you to know I'm proud of you. You did what I never had the courage to do. You stood up for what was right, even when it cost you everything. You protected your son. You protected yourself. I'm sorry I wasn't the father you deserved. I'm sorry I let her turn me into something I'm ashamed of. When I get out, I don't expect to be part of your life. I just want you to know that every day I'm in here, I think about what I did to you, and I'm truly sorry. Love, Daddy. I read that letter 3 times, crying through each reading. Then I put it in a box with all the other documents from this nightmare, a reminder of what I'd survived. I didn't write back, not yet. Maybe not ever. But I kept the letter. 1 year after the trial, I was promoted to senior medical billing specialist. The raise meant I could quit my night job and spend evenings with Isaiah. We started a new tradition. Friday night movie nights with popcorn and ice cream. "Mama," Isaiah said one Friday night, cuddled up next to me on the couch. "Are we happy now?" "Yes, baby," I said, kissing his forehead. "We're happy now." "Good. I like being happy." Me too, I thought. Me too. Pastor Dixon invited me to speak at church one Sunday. I didn't want to at first, but he convinced me. "Your story isn't just about surviving," he said. "It's about justice. About standing up for yourself when nobody else will. People need to hear that." So I stood in front of the congregation, smaller now, since many people had left after taking Mama's side, and I told my story. The whole story, nothing held back. "I didn't choose this," I said. "I didn't want to be the person who sent her parents to prison. But I also couldn't be the person who let them destroy me and my son. Sometimes the right choice is the hard choice. Sometimes standing up for yourself means standing alone. And sometimes family isn't the people who share your blood. It's the people who stand by you when everyone else walks away." The congregation was silent. Then Sister Marlene stood up and started clapping. Then Brother Thompson. Then Shanice. Then more people, until the whole church was on their feet, applause echoing off the walls. After service, people I'd never met came up to thank me. A young woman told me her mother had been stealing from her and she didn't know what to do until she heard my story. An older man said his daughter was in a similar situation, and now he understood why she'd pressed charges. I realized my nightmare had become someone else's roadmap to freedom. Isaiah started kindergarten that fall. On his first day, he wore his favorite shirt and carried a new backpack. He was nervous, but excited. "What if the other kids don't like me?" he asked. "Then they're missing out on knowing the most amazing kid in the world," I told him. "But I think they're going to love you. You're kind and smart and funny, just like your daddy was." "I wish I could have met Daddy." "Me too, baby." "He would have been so proud of you." "Is he proud of you?" The question caught me off guard. "I think so. I hope so." "I'm proud of you, Mama. You're the bravest person I know." I held him tight, this beautiful boy who'd been through so much without even realizing it. This child who I'd protected by making the hardest decision of my life. "I'm proud of you too," I whispered. 2 years after the trial, I got another letter, this time from Mama. I stared at it for a week before opening it. Finally, with Shanice sitting next to me for support, I read it. "Tamara, I'm writing this because my lawyer says I should. She says showing remorse might help with my appeal. But the truth is, I'm not sorry for what I did. I'm sorry I got caught. I'm sorry you couldn't just keep your mouth shut and let it go. Everything I did was for this family. Everything I did was because your father and I deserved better than we got. You were always going to be fine. You had a good job, a healthy son. We needed that money more than you did. I hope you're happy now that you've destroyed this family. I hope it was worth it. Your mother." I read it once. Then I tore it into tiny pieces and threw it in the trash. "You okay?" Shanice asked. "Yeah," I said, and I meant it. I'm actually better than okay, because now I know for sure that I made the right choice. She's never going to change. She's never going to admit what she did was wrong. And I don't need her to. You don't? No. I used to think I needed her apology to move on. I needed her to acknowledge the hurt she caused. But I don't anymore. I've moved on without it. I've built a life without her. and we're thriving. And we were. Isaiah was doing well in school. I'd saved enough money to actually have savings for the first time in my life. I was dating again, a teacher named Marcus who was patient and kind and loved my son. We were careful, taking things slow, but it felt good to open my heart again. Darius got married that spring. He asked me to be in the wedding party, and I said yes. It was healing, standing next to my brother, celebrating his happiness, knowing that we'd both survived the same trauma and come out stronger. At the reception, he pulled me aside. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For being brave enough to tell the truth. If you hadn't done what you did, I never would have known they were stealing from me too. You saved us both." "We saved each other," I said. "You stood by me when everyone else turned against me. You believed me. That meant everything." "You're my sister. That's what family does. Real family. The kind you can count on. The kind that doesn't steal your identity or threaten your child." 3 years after the trial, I was finally able to buy a house. A small 3-bedroom in Lithonia with a yard for Isaiah and room for all our dreams. The day we moved in, Shanice and Pastor Dixon and Darius and his wife all helped us unpack. "This is ours," I told Isaiah as we stood in the living room surrounded by boxes. "Nobody can take it away. Nobody can threaten us here. This is home." "I love our home, Mama." "Me too, baby. Me too." That night, after everyone left and Isaiah was asleep in his new bedroom, I sat on my back porch and looked at the stars. I thought about Terrence and how proud he would have been. I thought about the girl I used to be, who trusted too much and never questioned. I thought about the woman I'd become, who'd fought for herself and her son, and won. I thought about my parents sitting in prison cells, facing the consequences of their choices. And I thought about all the people who'd told me I was wrong to report them, who'd said family was everything, that I should have kept quiet, that I was destroying lives. They were right about one thing. I had destroyed something. I'd destroyed the lie, the illusion that everything was fine, the pretense that family meant blindly protecting each other no matter what. But in destroying that lie, I'd built something true, something real, something worth having. Freedom, dignity, peace. I'd lost a mother and gained myself. And that was a trade I'd make again in a heartbeat. Isaiah called from his bedroom. "Mama, can you come here?" I went to him, lay down next to him in his new bed in our new house, our safe house that nobody could take from us. "Tell me a story," he said sleepily. "What kind of story?" "A story about a brave mama who protected her baby from monsters." I smiled in the darkness. "Once upon a time," I began, "there was a mama who loved her son more than anything in the world." I told him a story. Not our story exactly, but close enough. And as I spoke, I realized something. We'd made it. Despite everything, against all odds, through betrayal and threats and fear, we'd survived. More than survived. We'd won. Justice had been served. Truth had won. And we were finally, truly free. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.